It's such a hard thing to define or even admit. Put your fingers down your throat. As you gag, you bite into your hand so hard. The wrenching to get it out. And then the physical movement of your throat. Your eyes are just bloodshot. Your eyes have gone.
Welcome to Immersive Sports Science. Content not commentary, sports science not bro science. In this review we're going to be reviewing the documentary Freddie Flintoff Living with Bulimia. Hi guys, due to the sensitive nature of this topic I'm going to be using more somber tones. Please find a link down below for Mind and the Beat charity if you need help or you fancy donating to these charities. Freddie Flintoff Living with Bulimia, which follows him as he tries to self-discover his bulimia and come to a certain sense of self-acceptance with it, and also to try and deal with it and discover it, how it affects sport.
Andrew Flintoff, otherwise known as Freddie Flintoff, because, well, the name sounds like Fred Flintstone.
Yeah! Now, for anyone who doesn't know who Freddie Flintoff is, you guys in America in particularly know him as the guy who replaced Matt LeBlanc on Top Gear. Freddie Flintoff was one of the best all-round England cricketers with both bat and ball of all time.
Something fantastic. Something that everybody can identify with. Oh, hello! Massive! Massive! One of the most magnificent strikes you'll ever see. Straight over the top of the stand. What a fantastic strike.
He also did a bit of professional boxing, which he didn't do too well. But now his main role is as a TV host.
Oh, get this over with.
Fred, have you got the handbrake on?
Remember, you are not alone. There are people out there who will help you with it. What I am talking about is the context and where it's in, and within the context of those who are obese and need help with obesity and obesity eating disorders. When relevance is key about talking about information, and quite a lot of people, especially intuitive eaters, intermittent fasters, often are very tribal about the type of information they portray, and that their information is the only information and the right information, and that's incorrect, including with how you deal with eating disorders. Everyone's mental health issue, which an eating disorder is going to be different. And therefore, you have to take in those individual differences and needs when it comes to treatment or dealing with mental health issues and anything to do with fitness, health, and sport.
Freddie Flintoff Living with Bulimia is an observational mode documentary, utilising different style of formats from talking head to actually following Freddie Flintoff through his journey of self-discovery and acceptance of his mental health condition. The documentary started with a glimpse of an interview he had talking about his own bulimia and what he does. It then followed Freddie Flintoff from the beginning of his career, starting off at Lancashire Cricket Club, and as he moved through the England setup. It was interesting to see Andrew Flintoff in full nostalgic mode. From here, he detailed the body issues he had at the time, being a tall, skinny lad, and how the others were much bigger, much stronger individuals, and he felt like he needed to be like them. He needed to play like them. As a new recruit to the England side in 2001, he was under constant scrutiny from fans, the press, and his colleagues. Flintoff felt pressure to keep his weight down. It was an obsession that soon evolved into full-blown bulimia, soon spiraled into something he battled with through his entire career, and which he hasn't fully dealt with to this very day. The show was keen to draw on the experiences of others and how Freddie Flintoff, with his own mental health issues, could relate to these particular individuals. This is important because mental health is an interpersonal issue. Before we see Freddie himself go through case formulation and therapy himself. Bulimia, like all eating disorders, is a mental health issue that is characterized by a series of purging. Over 1.5 million people in the UK suffer from eating disorders like bulimia. Experts estimate that 1 in 4 sufferers are male, and this is 16 times more likely to be in sport. Of course, guys, if you need help, I advise you to get help because you're 9 times more likely to recover from bulimia if you receive professional help.
In many aesthetic and athletic sports, it's often seen as being advantageous to be lighter. This is because force times mass equals acceleration, meaning the lighter you are, the same amount of force means you'll be able to run or be able to perform that move faster. Now, obviously, we got to take into account requires you to have the same amount of muscle power. We can see this from a similar case with Dom Sibley, who lost 12 kilograms during lockdown in order to help improve his performance and also because he felt self-conscious about his weight. He wasn't performing necessarily as well, especially when they did a tour of Sri Lanka.
As long as it's not doing me or anybody else around me any harm.
So you're saying to me, I don't see this as being a problem, but if you feel that you have to keep doing something and there's an anxiety about not doing it, then that's not a normal behaviour.
Take this hypothetical situation. 2 athletes characterised by similar behaviours, yet only one has an eating disorder. This is because the one athlete has anxieties about their food and food intake. The area of growing knowledge around eating disorders comes from mixed martial arts and boxing.
After my cricketing career was cut short by injury, in 2012, I decided to take up professional heavyweight boxing. Not least because I knew it would involve losing weight.
The process by which fighters shed weight is known as the cut.
I didn't like getting it in the head. I didn't particularly like hitting people neither. But the punches in the head was worth it to lose the weight. I lost 3.5 stone on that. And I went from 118 kilograms to 96 in 3 months.
Cutting is an extremely dangerous process, both mentally but also physically. Many fighters have died cutting for their weight in order to make the weight category.
I killed myself to get abs. I was on this diet where I had no energy, I had nothing. And at the end, I stood in front of the mirror, thought, you've got abs, haven't you? Well done. What happens next? I should feel better than this. It was everything I ever wanted. I look at my eyes and there's nothing behind them.
I was about 113 kilo when I started, and then I had my first fight at a 73.5. Extreme things people do to sort of get the weight off. Purged, vomited. It was just something that I had to do to achieve a goal. I suppose I knew that I shouldn't be doing it, but I had to make weight. I can do this to make weight.
All of a sudden, the fight's over and tell yourself that you've got this.
What we are seeing is a rising eating disorders in male athletes that were normally associated with female athletes, especially in sports where having low weight is important, if not beneficial to performance. The concept of exercising your calories off so you can eat more is problematic, but we have to take this with a pinch of nuance.
Month-long window of opportunity to stuff your face. You start the next fight camp big and then you've then got a yo-yo diet underneath which makes you crave more and it just becomes a vicious cycle.
For me to weigh in at 61, I walk around at 70. After the first pro fight I turned up here a week after 81 kilos. That's 20 kilos heavier than the weight that I weighed in at. Now if you put that into bottles of water, it's 20 litres of water. So that, to me, that's an eating disorder.
Historically and socially, men often do not portray their feelings because it was seen as socially desirable. Now, we know from this that Freddie Flintoff didn't talk about his eating disorder, but only told his wife.
Us men have been utterly useless when it comes to discussing mental health. We kind of keep it inside ourselves and we don't discuss it often enough. You can find out my views on that matter from my own personal battle with depression from this review I've done of Noah Wilson, Silent Battle. Also, there has been a lot of medical stigma surrounding not only obesity, but also eating disorders and how we deal with them both, which are a completely different context. Treat them is going to be different. This is from a medical model perspective.
The only time I did come close to asking for professional help was while I was still playing cricket.
It was a dietitian and I thought, well, if there's ever a time to speak to someone, it's this woman who's coming in. And just as I decided in my head, she said she works with female Olympians and gymnasts. A lot of them have got eating disorders. But there'll be none of that in this room, will there? So then that just knocked me and I carried on.
And she wouldn't imagine there's anyone with an eating disorder in this room because we're a group of lads, obviously. So I didn't feel that I could speak. I didn't feel I could say anything. And I think as well, being a bloke, you know, I'm 6'4", I'm from Preston. I'm not meant to have an eating disorder by rights.
Generally in psychology, you got a medical model perspective, and then you generally have the psychological perspective. And on a medical model perspective, we're looking to aim to fix something. You go over to some of these people because there's something wrong with you and you need a prognosis or a diagnosis to help you with what you are looking to fix. And that's the key word, fix, in that title. The psychological perspective states necessarily that it might not actually be a problem, and that we should learn to help you deal with that situation a lot better. Both perspectives have their rightful place and can be used interchangeably within practice. It's key to know that our knowledge of mental health issues has changed well considerably since the 90s and the noughties, from when Freddie Flintoff started playing. Your mental health issue was seen as a weakness, and in certain issues within sport, someone might try and utilise that against you in some way or another. It's naughty and they shouldn't do it, but I've seen it all the time. People will see these people, and even in general life, as being incompetent, being a hindrance, and that needs to be taken out because we need to facilitate these people in order to help not only with their recovery, but also to better that work environment.
But it's still that stigma that it's like a weakness.
Yeah.
And I think coming where I've come from, and you're always taught, you don't talk about things like that. And because it's drilled into you, opening up about an illness that can be perceived as a weakness in a bloke, you sort of don't want to talk about it.
Where you come from shapes you. It does instill you certain beliefs and certain ideas. One of them being, this doesn't affect people from my background. You're meant to be tough, you're meant to be strong. If you give something away, then you're weak. That becomes exhausting.
Some people don't want to show weakness.
You got to the point where, you went from maybe being sick in the bathroom to actually being sick in the bin, maybe going outside, out the back of the patio and being sick, like maybe beside a tree or something.
We weren't allowed to say anything. Everything was a secret, you see. And what we did was we actually were helping him eat. And because we didn't know how to deal with it any other way, and it was all being discreet and being respectful to Lawrence, and we didn't want to offend him, and that's the eating disorder family.
People fight their own battles behind closed doors sometimes.
Because I were embarrassed. It's my business. No one needs to know. In my head, I'd think, they'd rip me to pieces, nobody would talk to me and things like that.
And the strength is telling people. The strength is being able to have a conversation, own up to whatever your weaknesses are.
But remember guys, it is not a weakness. You may need help, but you may need to reframe the situation. I'm not a psychologist, I'm not a psychiatrist or a medical professional. I can't help you. But it's about taking ownership and accountability. But likewise, in the 90s and noughties, we thought originally that this was only a female problem. But since the 2010s, our understanding of how mental health issues are in men, especially amongst sport, where it's going to be more likely to happen and be more common, is greatly improved, and we have a greater understanding, not only scientifically, practically, and also emotionally as well. Society has a better understanding, but there's still a long way to go.
Then when we realise, okay, it's this thing, bulimia, well, what the heck's bulimia?
What never happened there, Freddie, was that nobody sat down with you and helped you to actually go through what you were experiencing at that time.
He went to the doctor once, and unfortunately the support wasn't there, and I think it was due to the lack of understanding. It was very stressful for us knowing that he was eating and vomiting and watching him fade away. His body had gone too far with it, and heart couldn't cope any longer.
In the middle of the night, I think he was just breathing his last breath, basically, and he rushed in and we actually tried to give him CPR. 1 minute, my son was standing in front of me, and the next minute he's a memory.
I'm constantly thinking about the calories, so it's black and white, that's the damage.
It's almost like taking yourself hostage.
Yeah.
There's no enjoyment.
No, and I know the consequences will only be negative after that. I think it's a way of just self-harming.
What the film didn't allude to was the two sides of Andrew Flintoff.
And he was very funny, but at home, he would have been easily, stressed.
But yeah, I guess, underneath he had those insecurities.
Freddie, or is it Andrew? There's Fred, the warrior sportsman who seems completely fearless, And there's Andrew, who seems a much more sensitive character. Talked very powerfully about depression and anxiety, and now bulimia.
I remember when I was young, when I started playing professional cricket, and I was a shy, quite retiring young lad. I don't think that would have cut it in the world of professional sport. So this Freddie character seemed to develop, where it was seen to be bulletproof. Nothing's going to bother him. Every time you walk out, you've got it under control. And I developed that over a period of time, I suppose, just as a coping mechanism. Don't get me wrong, it was a lot of fun as well.
What was odd about this film is that they never really explored this. They never really explored the dual personality of Freddie Flintoff. And that Slashinger V series back, those were things of beauty. As Freddie Flintoff did better in his career, he associated with himself being lighter. Maybe that was giving him the confidence, giving him the ability to be able to perform and to improve his life off the pitch.
Floyd's on well, though. I'm just going to be running as fast as I can here, try and get these old legs moving.
How fast is that?
Mate, you just wait and see.
Make sure you're backing up, Fred. Have you done your stretches, big fella?
Oh, the hammies are loose, they're loose.
How many Red Bulls tonight, Fred, as you're waiting to bat?
I've only had 2. I've got one left in my bag for bowling. I'm charged.
One of the misconceptions with bulimia is that it's just throwing up. That's not necessarily the case. Exercise can be used as a tool that aids their bulimia. Exercise can also be the very thing that helps them find control in their life.
The anxieties you have around food and the amount of training you're doing, the balance is off.
I've got coping mechanisms. I train, probably 9-10 times a week, but I enjoy it.
Well, for me, wouldn't be sustainable.
An athlete has to train, otherwise they won't perform. And their training's often more intense, and they do more of it. An ex-athlete is more likely to take on this intensity after they retire. But for the average person, that would be not sustainable.
And after treatment, it's made me realise that ain't normal.
When's the first time you eat?
Don't know when I'm going to eat or if I should eat. Don't get me wrong, I would sooner get up in the morning
and have some breakfast.
But if I do, I won't be happy. I'm always trying to lose weight.
When you talk about feeling better when you're leaner, what they see is how they actually feel. Shifted to being your belief that being thinner makes you happy or better. They're your beliefs, right? And going against them feels really uncomfortable again.
That if this is the one thing that is a bit of a battle, I'll take that.
And people get from a very dark place to a place where it's functional and it works. Does it mean that you're completely free?
I can deal with this.
You don't have to, though. It's your choice to.
Although the show was trying to keep niche, they had the perfect opportunity to talk of Freddie's other mental health issues and battles. For instance, his issues with alcoholism.
We just won the Ashes there. How good's that? And I was sat with Army. I got a cigar and a beer and he's got the Ashes, and then we just started.
6:15 the game ends. Champagne and beers until 10.
Yeah.
Hotel bar at 10:30, more beer. 12 a.m, Soho Club Prophecy ran up a £34,000 bill. At 5:45 a.m, gin and tonics followed by vodka and cranberry.
Healthy.
10:30 a.m, Mansion House, the Lord Mayor's reception. Freddie trips and gets on the bus to Trafalgar Square, drinking champagne directly from a bottle now, presumably to save time. 1:30 p.m, 10 Downing Street, where you swing on Leo's swing. You ask Cherie where the loo is. You're thrown out of the cabinet room for pretending to be the Home Secretary.
I was sat in the cabinet room and I thought, this is just so good. And I had a bottle of Beck's in my hand and I had my feet on the table and I was like hosting my own meeting.
You then may have thrown up in the garden and you are accused, Andrew Flintoff, of urinating on the Downing Street flower bed.
Historically, cricket players have suffered badly from mental health illnesses, especially within the England setup.
There's another side to good health, good mental health.
I wish I could just get an injury so I can just get 6 months out. That's not a cool place to be. What do? As soon as you take your whites off, your value and your brand just...
If cricket didn't go right for me, I would stay in my room. I did isolate myself. I think part of me is a bit of a Joker character. When I have my low moment, I think, I'm looking forward to room service. Everything is there. I would eat everything from it. I'll just stuff myself with all this sort of unhealthy foods, crisps and the chocolates and the fizzy drinks, and I just sit there and think, this feels great. Actually, I'm all right now. That starts to build up after a while. That's an addiction.
I'd always been resistant really to sports psychologists or people to talk to about that stuff because I felt as though I would learn more from dealing with those problems by myself.
Nobody cared about Finn. All they cared about was frickin' go to the nets and hit that target.
The doctor would ask me, how's the bowling going? Burst into tears. I was trying so hard to get it right and trying not to let myself down, I suppose.
Just was awful and lonely. I remember thinking, there's something not quite right. I can't concentrate, or I'm quite easily distracted and losing focus on what I'm normally so good at. Breakfast, you know, in just in tears, basically, trying to hide it from my teammates, having my cap over my eyes, eating my cornflakes.
That was horrendous. Just crying in a dressing room. I was completely gone. I mean, completely gone. And why they let me do the press.
Jimmy and I were sat on the physio bed. Trotty walked past us just pouring with tears. Jimmy and I looked at each other like, have I just see that right? You know, I don't know, what's happened there?
If you've got a guy that's crying, it just tells you everything you need to know about that environment.
And would you feel that now you're controlling the eating disorder rather than it's controlling you?
No. At that time, I'd be bringing up just normal meals. If I felt bloated or my belly, I was obsessed with like my love handle, even though there were nothing on me. I'd noticed that I was losing control of this bulimia, that it were making me sick rather than me making myself sick.
Right.
The film followed an observational mode documentary which followed Freddie Flintoff, or Andrew Flintoff, as he explored his bulimia both through interviews with the different interviewers as well as looking at through the experiences of others. There was a heavy use of darker colours, obviously to show that it's quite a serious issue, quite a dark issue. The director was keen to show Andrew Flintoff, not the Freddie Flintoff that we all know, and in a way it was quite disappointing in that respect. We all like and love Freddie Flintoff, this humorous, happy-go-lucky character. But him utilising his reflective practice and reflecting upon his feelings, we got more sombre tones and much greater depth of information. The director was also keen on showing the pauses in the voices of Andrew Flintoff and the people he was interviewing.
I'm always trying to lose weight.
Why?
This is an attempt to make it more humanistic, more personal to the viewer. The use of uncomfortably close headshots also helps us with this, gives us an uncomfortably close impression of Freddie Flintoff. This was enhanced by them highlighting his mannerisms. In this powerful and unflinching documentary, Freddie Flintoff goes on an actual personal journey to explore the eating disorder he has kept secret for over 20 years. Freddie Flintoff Living with Bulimia was a highly poignant film that will relate to a minority of people who watch it. The film did a good job in highlighting what bulimia is, especially with it relating to Freddie Flintoff, although they could have done a better job explaining his other mental health issues. Alas, this is not what the film was about. It's specifically aimed at a very specific thing that was happening to Freddie Flintoff and its wider context. Filmmakers were highly respectful and tried to show this within their film itself. It was mainly specifically aimed towards the conversations Freddie Flintoff was having with specific individuals about the eating disorder. The film was also very good at highlighting the storyline arc of Freddie Flintoff, how he got his bulimia and his journey in order to help get it fixed, which is probably the wrong term to use, if at most at least trying to understand it. All in all, I give Freddie Flintoff Living with Bulimia a KSA score of 96.56.
Oh, hello! Massive! Massive! One of the most magnificent strikes you'll ever see. Oh, well, now it's 6 more. We're witnessing something fantastic. Something that everybody can identify with. Thrilling sport.